Today's reading is part 2 of Amos Tutuola's The Palm Wine Drinkard. The description of the curious creature. He was a beautiful, complete gentleman. He dressed with the finest and most costly clothes. All the parts of his body were completed. He was a tall man, but stout. As this gentleman came to the market on that day, if he had been an article or animal for sale, he would be sold for at least 2,000 pounds. As this complete gentleman came to the market on that day, and at the same time that this lady saw him in the market, she did nothing more than to ask him where he was living, but this fine gentleman did not answer her or approach her at all. But when she noticed that the fine or complete gentleman did not listen to her, she left her articles and began to watch the movements of the complete gentleman about the market, and left her articles unsold. By and by the market closed for that day, then the whole people in the market were returning to their destinations, etc., and the complete gentleman was returning to his own too. But as this lady was following him about in the market all the while, she saw him when he was returning to his destination as others did. Then she was following him, complete gentleman, to an unknown place. But as she was following the complete gentleman along the road, he was telling her to go back or not to follow him. But the lady did not listen to what he was telling her, and when the complete gentleman had tired of telling her not to follow him or to go back to her town, he left her to follow him. Do not follow unknown man's beauty. But when they had traveled about 12 miles away from that market, they left the road on which they were traveling and started to travel inside an endless forest in which only all the terrible creatures were living. Return the parts of the body to the owners, or hired parts of the complete gentleman's body to be returned. As they were traveling along in this endless forest, then the complete gentleman in the market that the lady was following began to return the hired parts of his body to the owners, and he was paying them rentage money, the rentage money. When he reached where he hired the left foot, he pulled it out, he gave it to the owner and paid him, and kept going. When they reached the place where he hired the right foot, he pulled it out and gave it to the owner, and paid for the rentage. Now both feet had returned to the owners, so he began to crawl along the ground. By that time, that lady wanted to go back to her town and her father, but the terrible and curious creature, or the complete gentleman, did not allow her to return or go back to her town or her father again, and the complete gentleman said thus: I had told you not to follow me before we branched into this endless forest which belongs to only terrible and curious creatures. But when I became a half-bodied, incomplete gentleman, you wanted to go back. Now that cannot be done. You have failed. Even you have never seen anything yet. Just follow me. When they went furthermore, then they reached where he hired the belly, ribs, chest, etc., and he pulled them out and gave them to the owner and paid for the rentage. Now to this gentleman or terrible creature remained only the head and both arms with neck. By that time he could not crawl as before, but only went jumping on as a bullfrog, and now this lady was soon faint for this fearful creature whom she was following. But when the lady saw every part of this complete gentleman in the market, was spared or hired, and he was returning them to the owners, then she began to try all her efforts to return to her father's town, but she was not allowed by this fearful creature at all. When they reached where he hired both arms, he pulled them out and gave them to the owner. He paid for them, and they were still going on in this endless forest. They reached the place where he hired the neck. He pulled it out and gave it to the owner and paid for it as well.